Extra Point with Ryan Justice is sponsored by The Phone Medic. For the best in cell phone, tablet, or laptop repairs, The Phone Medic is the only choice for you. The Phone Medic also offers gaming PCs and laptops for both gamers and everyday users. Visit one of the 3 Phone Medic locations in Amarillo, Canyon, and their new location in Lubbock today. Hello, football fans! Welcome to the Extra Point with Ryan Justice.
And then there were 4. We are down to the last 4 remaining in the NFL playoffs. It is conference championship week. What an eventful divisional round we had. We're going to cover it all tonight on the Extra Point. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. It is a Wednesday. We have conference championships this weekend. Lot to talk about. A lot of coaching moves today. Let's go ahead and get started. First off, be sure to like, share, and subscribe on Twitch, YouTube, Spotify, and over on Facebook, wherever you guys can get it. Be sure to shout out in the comments. Rep your team. Let us know if you like what we're saying. If you don't like what we're saying, we love hearing from the fans. And with that, I'm going to bring in my co-host, the one and only Andrew Martinez. Andy, how's it going tonight?
Good, man. How are you doing tonight?
I think I've recovered from this weekend. I think I think some of the bitterness has subsided. But I mean, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot. I don't know. It flared up a little bit today, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. It flared up a little bit today, but we'll get into it a little bit later in the show. Man, are you are you hyped for this weekend?
Man, I think especially after what we saw through this past week, this past weekend, I think these games are super pivotal. I think we didn't, some unexpected teams are here, and I think these games are going to be real exciting.
Yeah, these are. I mean, one of these games for me is completely unexpected, and we'll get to that in here in a little bit. But in case you don't know, we have Commanders Eagles in the afternoon slate on Sunday, and then of course Bills Chiefs, which is the one that everybody thought was going to happen. Kind of a lot of preseason picks for the AFC Championship, and then we will have the Super Bowl to determine who's taking it home the Lombardi this year. Before we get to that, we'll get into our hot topics. Lots to talk about today and this week. We saw when the there he is, go Bills, Hunter Dillon with the Bills shout out. You know what? I'm kind of rooting for them this weekend too. But we kind of got the rumors that if the Lions lost this week, we would start to see a chain reaction of coaching hires in the NFL. And that was exactly what happened with, of course, the big name coming off the market, Ben Johnson going to the Bears. He will get to take the reins with Caleb Williams after Matt Eberflus left and all the turmoil that happened in Chicago last year. And I think this might have been the obvious choice for Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I think especially with a young quarterback like Caleb Williams, I think in the last offseason, him and the Bears flirted, for a little bit, in that offseason too. So it's pretty well everyone was guessing if the Bears decide not to go with someone like McCarthy or something like that quickly, that once Ben Johnson was available, he was going to go to the Bears.
Yeah, and that sparks a wonder, like what's going to happen with Mike McCarthy now. But because I felt like he was a strong candidate to go to the Bears too. But this makes things a lot more interesting in the NFC North, because now you've got the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions going in division, which I think is almost worst case scenario for Detroit. I would have rather shipped him out to the AFC. But now he's in division with a roster that is pretty well set up. There is some improvements that could be made, but you've got your quarterback. You've got at least 2 receivers that he has good rapport with and can be dangerous with, a running game that has gotten going at times, and then, of course, a defense that has had some good moments and has been stingy at times during the season. Like any roster, there's going to be some things that they got to build up. I know a lot of people are pointing to the offensive line as a place to be built up, but man, Ben Johnson, with what he has been able to do with that Detroit offense and how he has turned around guys like Jared Goff, has been impressive. Is almost underselling it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, this, again, 3 out of the 4 teams in the North already made it, to the playoffs. So that just makes one more team that much dangerous. And yeah, just especially to have all these, fun designed trick plays that Ben Johnson likes, but, to have a young quarterback who can, maybe pull off some of them better than, even a Goff can. So I think, if he goes out there, builds his coaching staff the way he wants it, and we all know that he's an offensive mind. So he's probably going to go out there very, very, get yourself a very offensive kind of game plan going. And yeah, I think Ben Johnson has, enough tools that he doesn't, you need to fill the holes that need to be there, but not as, bad as some of the other coaching positions, when it comes to parts that you have to put together.
The other thing too, and I think I haven't heard a lot of this, he's bringing that Dan Campbell mindset to the Bears, and I think they need that because the culture there has been very soft over the last few years, and you haven't really seen that hard-nosed, gritty monsters of the Midway Chicago Bears that you've gotten the reputation for over the years. You haven't seen that in a while. And I think if he can kind of bring them back to that, and on top of that, give them an offense that's going to be fun to watch and is going to be explosive and productive and do the things that the Lions were able to do in their turnaround. Again, the Bears could be a team that very much could be fun to watch next year. And it could pull the nose up for Chicago and actually give Bears fans a reason to be proud to be Bears fans next season. I would imagine that's a Bears fan joke. So if you've never seen the misery of being a Bears fan, go look up some videos. They will tell you themselves that it is a miserable time being a Bears fan. But hopefully some relief is on the horizon. The other coordinator of the Detroit Lions got hired today. Aaron Glenn goes to the New York Jets. They fired Robert Saleh earlier in the season, and Aaron Glenn gets hired onto the Jets. He was drafted to the Jets in the 90s, played for them for, I believe, 6 or 7 seasons. And he's one of those guys that I think they're hoping does the DeMeco Ryans thing that they did for the Texans, which is a former player coming back home to turn around a team that has been in complete disarray for a while now, and hopefully pull them out of this whole Aaron Rodgers debacle.
I mean, right. That seems to be kind of the thing now. Hey, former players going back to their team where they were and, trying to coach this team. We saw what happened with the last defensive coach, in their first coaching stint with the Jets, and, Robert Saleh didn't last too long, but, maybe this time, if Aaron Rodgers is out, maybe he can build a team that he wants to build and build something successful there in New York.
And Aaron Glenn's coming into a defense that has not been bad. He actually came into a defense that last year was really good, and this year, I think kind of got lost in the shuffle of all the turmoil that was happening on the other side of the ball. And then on top of that, the guy that was running that defense and running it well got run out of town. So he's got the pieces there. I think Sauce Gardner could really benefit from learning from a DB like Aaron Glenn. The defense, I think, is going to get better. They got some pieces that they need to get. Got to figure out the cap situation, I believe, and the quarterback situation. And we're going to see what they do in the draft. But Aaron Glenn also has a pretty wide net of places he can go for his coordinators. A lot of guys, I think Houston's Gerard Johnson was mentioned. The passing game coordinator for the Rams was another guy that was mentioned. Of course, he's got access to offensive staff on the Lions. And Aaron Glenn, I think he could put together a good staff. This Jets team is not in complete shambles roster wise because you've still got Garrett Wilson, you still got Breece Hall, Braylon Edwards. I think you got to fix the offensive line, but the defense is intact. The defense is there, and I think he could turn this Jets defense into something nasty again.
Well, I mean, we saw what he could do, in Detroit when 18, however many, your main, your starter defense, your backup defense, everyone's hurt, and he still made him, he still took him, as the number 1 seed. So you can show what he can do with a really beat up defense and one that's solid. We can really show what he can do.
I mean, if I'm being honest, he was the guy that kind of unlocked the secret into how to shut down the Vikings. You saw what he did. What he had Alex Anzalone doing to TJ Hawkinson was stunning to that. This is the most interesting news of the day. And this is something that it developed pretty quick throughout the course of the day. I feel bad for my son, Braden. I really hope he hadn't really gotten a lot of this news. But we started off the day with news that Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, turned down the job in Jacksonville, and GM Trent Baalke had a lot to do with it. Well, around 3 o'clock this afternoon Central, we get word that Trent Baalke is out in Jacksonville, and that's a move that some people have been wanting for a while.
Yeah, I think it kind of shows what kind of turmoil the front office, ownership on down there in Jacksonville really has, the way certain deals were made previously. You spend a lot of money for not a lot of results. Are guys actually doing the job they're supposed to be doing, or are they, or is it we're whispering in the owner's ear and making a bunch of bad plays? We're getting too close. And yeah, so, when Baalke was still going to be around after after he was fired, I think people were surprised, and now, just clearing house really after you have a potential coach decline the job.
Yeah, and not only did you have Liam Cohen decline it, Ben Johnson declined it as well. And there was a Zoom meeting that happened not long after the season ended that had Shad Khan on it, had Trent Baalke, and Khan, with Baalke on that call in full view, was basically saying if coach wants him gone, we'll entertain it. And lo and behold, Baalke was right there listening to it. And, a couple weeks later, he's gone. So, I mean, the Jags coaching search is on fire. Like everything's. I saw something today, like at the beginning of the offseason. Hey, your coaching search is a brush fire, and then they refused to fire Trent Baalke. Oh, hey, it's on fire, and then they fired Trent Baalke today after a lot of the top candidates have gotten hired, and like, hey, it's burned to the ground, and now Jacksonville's calling in the fire trucks. I saw an interesting note today. It was a graphic of coaches that were one and done coaches in the last 2 years. 3 of those coaches on this list of, I think, 12. So 25% of these coaches were Trent Baalke hires. No, wasn't in the last 2 seasons. It's as that were hired by him as a GM. 2 of them were with the Niners, and the other one was Urban Meyer. And then, of course, you have Doug Peterson gone after 2 seasons. So that kind of shows you the track record of what Trent Baalke is. For the Jags, I mean, it's okay, where do you go from here? Who's available? Who's still left? If I'm the Jags, I would entertain Mike McCarthy. I would give Mike McCarthy a call and see what he could do. There's still a couple of offensive coordinators out there, maybe Cliff Kingsbury. I know this is a guy, he's in college right now, but he's a very familiar name in NFL circles. Maybe Eric Bieniemy could come in and see what he could do with Trevor Lawrence. Ron Rivera has been a name that's been floated around in this coaching cycle. But if I'm the Jags, you need to start moving, because now not only do you have a head coach you got to be looking for, now you've got a GM.
Yeah, it's they definitely put them in a very tough spot to come out of this, and not have scorched earth totally behind them.
Even with Balky gone, do you feel like this is like the most undesirable coaching job in the NFL right now?
I mean, it's hard not to, it's hard not to think that for sure. I think there's just so much dysfunction in Jacksonville from top to bottom that walking in there, it's pretty hard to look on a lot of the positive side of it.
Well, I mean, I think the positive side of it is I look at the roster and I say, okay, there's pieces of this offense. They were hurt a lot last year. You lose Christian Kirk, although I don't know that he's been totally productive. I thought Gabe Davis was a good pickup. You drafted 2 really good running backs in Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne. The defense has not been bad, although I think your big swing and a miss was not getting Aiden Hutchinson when he was right there for the picking for you and taking Trayvon Walker instead. But you pick up guys like Aaron Armstead. Josh Hines-Allen has been a superstar for you guys. I didn't think the pickup of Mac Jones as your backup was bad, and he did some good things when Trevor Lawrence went down. But the roster, I don't think is in bad shape. You can add some pieces to this roster and massage the cap a little bit to get there. So I don't think roster wise it's that unappealing. I think front office wise it's a mess. Front office wise, it's one of the ones that I'm sitting there going, do I really want to deal with this? The only other job I would think is almost as unappealing would be the Saints, because the Saints are in cap hell. You've got an old roster. You've got guys that can't stay healthy. You've got guys with attitudes, and the bills are going to come due at some point. Mm-hmm. But so for me, it's kind of a toss-up. But man, the Jaguars are going to Jaguar, aren't they?
They are. They definitely are.
So, well, that'll do it for Hot Topics. We're going to get into the game reactions. It was divisional round, Andy. I always said this is the hardest round of the playoffs. This is where you really separate the good from the bad, or the good, the bad, and the assisted, if that's what you want to go with. I guess I'll go ahead and get it out of the way. We opened up divisional weekend with the Chiefs and the Texans, and this was a game that was competitive all the way through. The Texans fought in spite of themselves a lot of the times. Bobby Slowick's play calling was very questionable at times, and I really think it kind of underscored the struggles that the Texans have had all year.
Yeah, I think so. I think when things were popping off and they were when they were good, but when they were bad, it was definitely something that you couldn't. Yeah, it's hard to come back from. And it was the defense was obviously in that had some pretty bad calls up against them, but I mean even in the spite of that, I mean they still looked good. They were still aggressive. They were getting after Mahomes. They were getting after everything, and it wasn't due to lack of trying, but yeah, it was just it was just you saw those falls when gaps were there, and Kansas City took advantage of every one of them.
I think it was the story that this game kind of in one game encapsulated the Texans' whole season. The defense played lights out. The defense played amazingly. And I know if you look at the stat sheet, it shows, hey, the Texans outgained the Chiefs and moved the ball well on them. And that's true. But the offensive line, the communication, and just the erosion of the confidence that CJ Stroud had in them was very much apparent. And it showed 8 sacks, and that's not the first time that's happened to CJ this year. It underscored the need for this team to get help on the offensive line. It underscored the need for this team to stay healthy, because I feel like if they had Diggs or Dell out there on the field, probably we'd be looking at a much closer game. The offense wouldn't have scored 12 points. I know it says 14 on the screen. That was due to a safety at the end of the game to kind of screw over a lot of people's parlays. But I'm going to touch on the officiating a little bit later, but I think if they would have had just one more of those pieces on the field, this game would have been a lot closer, because when they played back in week 16, you saw what Tank Dell was doing to them. You saw that they were having to account for him as well as Nico Collins, even though Joe Mixon wasn't really running well. The thing that infuriated me, the thing that just crawled under my skin, was the fact that they trotted Shaq Mason's washed ass out there at right guard when they had Juice Scruggs, who played really well the 2 weeks he was in at right guard. But they bring out Shaq Mason, and it was the same story with him that it has been all year. And the fact that he is a very expensive revolving door at right guard, and it got CJ killed.
Yeah, like I said, they definitely got exploited in that front. You can't let your quarterback get hit that much. You can't rely just on the defense. Again, like you said, they played lights out, but the offense has to have more weapons to be able to get to, and it just they couldn't. Every time they tried to get going, it was just they just couldn't cross that barrier to really capitalize.
On the defense, I don't know how you let Travis Kelce get that wide open. I don't know how you just let him go and sit in the zone like that and let Mahomes keep going to him. Mm-hmm. That's got to tighten up. That's one of those things that they got. Although I think if they would have had like a Jalen Petrie back, or if they would have had Jimmy Ward there healthy, that might not have happened. You're playing rookie Kamari Lassiter in a spot like that, but he's normally, your number 2 corner instead of being right there at your nickel. And you're subbing in and out Miles Bryant, who is not Jalen Petrie or Jimmy Ward by any means. I know he had some good plays last week or the week before against the Chargers, but this is a whole different level. For the Chiefs, like I said, I'll get to the extra stuff here in a little bit, but they didn't do anything that scared me. They didn't do anything that I sat there and was like, oh, this is different.
I mean, the only thing that's probably different than what you've seen for most of the year is you finally saw the Mahomes Kelce connection throughout the game. I think that's, you kind of saw the productivity that, this is what everyone's been, been talking about. Where's Kelce been most of the year? I mean, this was another game where, again, I think he had over 100 yards. I know he had that one touchdown as Patrick's falling onto it. He's falling onto his face and still like wild. And, but again, nothing, like we've kind of said all year, there's nothing dynamic about this team. They just, Pat and the rest of the team just knows how to get enough to win. And it was another showing of that. They did just enough. The defense held out, was able to make some stops and, play, really beat up the Houston offense. And, the Kansas City just stayed ahead, and it didn't have to try to make a comeback, didn't have to, they just were able to coast ahead and stay ahead. And that's kind of been what Kansas City's been all year. It hasn't been dynamic. It hasn't been lights out like, in a couple other games we'll see, but I mean, they get the win.
Mahomes had 177 yards. All but 60 of it went to Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
And, that's, again, he was under 100 yards, 177. And like I said, all but 60 of it went to Travis Kelce. Laster and Stingley didn't allow a catch. Mm-hmm. And so, but they just allowed themselves to get beat up underneath. And I mean, like I said, we'll get into the extracurricular stuff later. I got some stuff to say about that. But, especially after what happened today. But, they're right back where they were, and they are in prime position to get that three-peat. We move on to me, this was the surprise of the week. I didn't see this coming before the season. This might have been the biggest surprise of the year. I know you're sitting here looking, this is a high-scoring game. I wonder if it was close at some points. Man, it didn't look close to me at all between the Lions and the Commanders.
I mean, I think I kind of said it, I think we said it last week of, that both Dan Quinn and Dan Campbell are going to come in here with their foot on the gas and just keep running, especially Dan Quinn going.
They'll probably come in with
How
a gat too. Like,
you know, yeah, something, man, have to, and just going full throttle. And it's like they never stopped from when they played Tampa. They were
no.
just continuing, they were playing the same game, and Jaden Daniels just went off and had a fantastic game. The Commanders took it to the number 1 seed. Don't get me wrong, that poor defense, you could tell the Lions defense was beat by the end of that game. Again, they're playing, half the team is out, on IR. They're bringing anyone, if you have a pulse, we want you to play. But I mean, once Washington got the lead, it was never close.
No.
It was, they had the first stop, and you saw the first drive by Detroit come in. You're like, okay, this is great. They looked good that first drive. And after that, you couldn't stop Jane Daniels and Dan Quinn and the Commanders. And it was, I mean, just a beating. We kind of talked about that. It might be, this good shootout. It was just a non-throttle, whopping from one side the entire game, which was very unexpected.
And Jared Goff kind of reverted back to the Jared Goff we saw against the Texans, where he threw 5 interceptions. And I think you could tell that the Commanders really studied that tape, because Goff threw 3. He threw 3 picks. And I think the Commanders looked at what the Texans were doing against the Lions in that game where he threw 5 interceptions, and were studying it pretty closely. And this, again, like you said, I know they had the break. This very much looked like a Lions team that was just gassed. That was just they gave everything they had, and they didn't have enough to give to go to to overcome a team like the Commanders. And again, it's like we always say in the playoffs, it's that team that gets hot at the right time that usually comes in and makes a deep run. And that's exactly what the Commanders have been. Whether it's Eckler or Brian Robinson, again, it's like we say with the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, this team very much does go where Jaden Daniels takes them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this game, obviously the last game, we were pretty sure put an exclamation point on Rookie of the Year. But I mean, this game just
sealed it.
Lights out, sealed it. I mean, he took him to, he's doing things that he could do, something that a rookie's never done. He could, if he goes all the way, he could do something that only a couple of men have ever done. So it's like it's a wild time. I mean, Jaden Daniels, because sometimes you see these, quarterbacks who, like to run, you saw him break out and, make these big plays, but he'd also, again, he'd sit there in the pocket and let this defense try to get at him, but he'd get that ball off just in time and make these incredible throws. And I mean, he looks like a guy who's been doing this for years.
And he took no sacks. He wasn't touched.
No, wasn't touched. But, he'd sit there in the pocket. He'd take these hits. He just looked absolutely stoic, like he'd been doing this all his life, ready for this. And man, Dan Quinn has really turned this team around, and what a thing. I think, again, like we said too, with Goff, with not just Goff turnover 3, the interception on the weird trick play you try to do, I think I understand you're trying to, do what's gotten there for you all week with the, all year with these trick plays. I think at some point you need to go hard nosed and, simple down your offense a little bit when you're that far behind trying to come back. But
yeah, I mean, Dan Campbell doesn't do that. He doesn't scale back at all.
No.
I'm thinking about this since the decade turn. In the last 5 years, we could see we might see 2 things that have never happened before in the league. Twice we have seen a Super Bowl won. We have seen a team win a Super Bowl on its home field. And we might see a rookie win the Super Bowl, all in the span of 5 years. Think about that. That's nuts. We get on to the Rams and the Eagles, and this game was close. But again, this was another game that I felt like, and it really just showed you what the Eagles' season was and what the Rams' season has been. This was a game that summed up both teams' seasons all in 60 minutes of football. The Eagles get the win over the Rams at home, But again, Jalen Hurts just didn't look like I had seen him look at times this year.
Yeah, I mean, with Jalen Hurts, you saw the big run to begin the game. He takes off for that. What is it? It was like 40.
He had a long
40
run. It was like 40-something yards.
Yeah, so you see him kind of take off. You're like, okay, cool. Look, this is it, and everything else. So just seemed kind of off again. Obviously, Saquon had, I mean, a hell of a game. I think over 200 yards, something like that. I mean, again, it's the Saquon Barkley show, and Saquon's taking us to the promised land. But you could never really count out the Rams. They were fighting to the very end. It was a weird game. It was just it was definitely one of probably the most just like you said, off game, but both teams kind of, like you said, they kind of summed up their whole year and how they got here. We're really still not sure, but they're here.
Yeah, I mean, both quarterbacks combined to take 12 sacks, with Hurts taking more. He was 75% on his completion percentage for only 128 yards. Saquon carried the ball 26 times, and of course, Puka and Cooper Kupp shined in this game. Kyron Williams went over 100 yards. And it's not like the Rams offense just completely sputtered and died. I think Vic Fangio called a really good game. And of course, anytime you get 5 sacks on a quarterback, that's always a good thing. You didn't allow a receiver to go over 100 yards through the air. Stafford had a couple passing touchdowns, but all in all, like, I never felt like the Rams fully had control of this game. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just because you have such a dominant runner on the other side in Saquon Barkley. And, again, in case of emergency, break glass for Barkley. They've broken it so many times this year. And I'm like, I really, really hope Saquon gets legit consideration for the MVP. Even though he didn't break the record this year, I really hope he does get like legit consideration. If they win this, the awards will go up. They've already voted on them, but I really hope he got legit consideration for the MVP this year because
it's most valuable player, and it's not the person who has the most stat. Shouldn't be the most person who had the most highlights, the most stats, the most valuable player. I mean, I don't know if you can really go with are the Eagles even close to the spot without Saquon? I don't think so.
No. And I mean, if you want to go highlight of the year, Saquon had the highlight of the year. I mean, it was a highlight so big that they put it in Madden. Like, I mean, that it's now a move in Madden that you can pull off. That it was so big of a highlight. And I mean, we haven't had a running back win it since Adrian Peterson. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, if it's not him, I get the cases for Lamar Jackson. I get the cases for Josh Allen. But man, someone's gotta throw a vote Saquon's way. Like,
absolutely.
I don't think he'll win it, but I hope he gets a respectable amount of votes. We move on to the main event Sunday night in a very frosty. This was a snow game too. This was our second snow game of the day. Mm-hmm. At a very frosty Buffalo, the Ravens and the Bills came down to the last 2-point conversion of the game, and again, heartbreak for the Ravens in the playoffs, man.
Yeah, again, you have a lot of people who want to be like, oh, Mark, he should have caught that, and without Mark Andrews, but also like, why if you would have kicked the extra point instead of gone for the 2-point that didn't succeed earlier, if you'd have gone for just extra points both times, you still would be tied, and you'd be going to overtime. So I think it's a lot you want to throw at certain people, but yeah, I mean, you had Lamar who had a great game. Again, it showed that turnovers are going to be your downfall, and that's kind of that was a lot of the summary of this weekend. Whoever didn't turn over the ball won, essentially. The Rams lost it twice. Obviously, Detroit lost it a few times. The Ravens lost it a few times. Like, if you didn't turn the ball over, you were probably going to win. And it really showed, the toughness of this Bills team when you're going against a guy, going against a team like Lamar, with Lamar and Derrick Henry. And Isaiah likely had a great game. So I think, it's a tough one for the Ravens, who start the season with a loss because of a couple of toes, and you have the yeah, and you losing on drop. So it's a tough one if for the Ravens for sure.
You see the crazy stat of every team that gained the most yards this weekend lost.
Yeah.
And it goes back to exactly what you said, which is the turnovers, because I think every team that gained more had more turnovers. I have to go back and do the research on it, but I believe they did have more turnovers. And despite the weather, like you said, Lamar had a great game. Lamar had a really good game, probably one of his better playoff games that he has had. And of course, like I said, you had the two big negative plays by Mark Andrew. Of course, the fumble earlier in the game and then the drop pass. And now you've got the questions, the questions are going to be there. And I believe there's been some footage released, and I need to comb through it, but some of the Hard Knocks footage that got released from the playoff loss has been pretty tough. You can see this one stuck with the Ravens, and it might stick with them for a little while. They've got 8-9 months to think about it.
Yeah, I think I saw a highlight of, for the Bills, and I think if you have a guy like Derrick Henry, give him the ball as much as possible, like you can, especially there at the end. You have 3 downs, try to get it in there more with Derrick Henry. He's your freight train. There were a couple of runs where he seemed unstoppable. He'd get those big chunks. It's why don't you hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch in the Super Bowl?
Exactly.
You have one of the best running backs out there. Hand it to Derrick Henry. But also, again, I think I saw a highlight where that Mark Andrews play is what they go to every 2-point conversion. That's
predictable.
Again, super predictable. Harbaugh there has to be something. I know last season, at the end of last season, they were talking about, is Harbaugh's running Baltimore over because they haven't seen the results lately. Not just because not because they don't like him, but is change needed in Baltimore. But I mean, it's a hard one for sure. If you're this Baltimore team.
Yeah, I think he got bought a little bit more time because despite that in play and a couple of plays that have happened to this game, I mean, it's the divisional round of the playoffs. Like I said, this is the hardest round of the playoffs for me for a reason, because I think this is the round of the playoffs. Everyone is just fighting their hardest to make it to that championship game, because for some teams, that's what determines a successful season or not. That's what determines real progress in this league. That's the break. This is almost like the ceiling you have to break through in order to legit lay claim to not just the conference championship, but to the Super Bowl. And I mean, the Ravens are capable of doing it. Todd Monken over these last 2 years has really unlocked Lamar Jackson and has done an outstanding job with this Ravens offense. It's like you said, run Derrick Henry from the 2-yard line. Run Derrick. You've got a good offensive line. It's cold, so that ball isn't going to be the easiest to catch. Run Derrick Henry or run Lamar Jackson. Those are your 2 most dangerous weapons. Use them.
Absolutely.
So that'll do it for the game reactions for the divisional round, guys. Hey, shout out to our sponsors real quick. Let's go ahead and let them know.
The Extra Point with Ryan Justice is sponsored by The Phone Medic. For the best in cell phone, tablet, or laptop repairs, The Phone Medic is the only choice for you. The Phone Medic also offers gaming PCs and laptops for both gamers and everyday users. Visit one of the 3 Phone Medic locations in Amarillo, Canyon, and their new location in Lubbock today.
Well, yep, and of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, guys. We want to get to 50 followers on Twitch. We want to, hand out some subscriptions and do some really cool content over there on Twitch. Keep you guys updated throughout the year. And on game day, do maybe some live Twitch exclusives from certain places, maybe some giveaways and stuff like that on Twitch. So go hit the Twitch at Justice8908. And of course, go follow the Spotify, the Extra Point with Ryan Justice on Spotify. And of course, where you guys are watching now, click that like, share, and subscribe button. for that. Well, we got through with our game reactions, and now we're going to go with 3 up and 3 down divisional round edition. And there's a lot to talk about in this 3 up and 3 down. We hinted at some of it during the game reactions, but first up on the up list, and of course, it was hard with the with the way that this weekend played out. Saquon Barkley, I think he's been on the up list the most times this season.
I mean, again, absolutely, because he should be. He's shown, again, anytime people talk about Saquon, it's all like, look what he did this time. Look what he did now. And again, the Eagles wouldn't be here without him. The Giants, again, how they don't just keep kicking themselves in the face for this every time they see a play, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, what could you say? It had another fantastic game. And again, if the Eagles don't make it past this round, it won't be due like a trying on Saquon's part.
No, it won't. Honestly, I mean, this is the best season Saquon Barkley has ever had, and over 200 yards in this game. The ability, and here's the thing: you think about Saquon Barkley and you think about his journey. This was a guy who, in his first few years, had the reputation of not being able to stay on the field at all, and now you're riding him for 26 carries in the divisional round of the playoffs for 200 yards. I think this just kind of highlights how grossly mishandled he was in New York. And I again, that piece of footage from Hard Knocks in the offseason of the New York Giants is going to haunt them for a long, long time. How Brian Daboll and Joe Shane still have a job after what you're seeing Saquon Barkley did, the fact that the guy that you stuck with is not on the team anymore, and B, with the results that happened on the field this season, how they still have jobs is, I mean, don't get me wrong, Mara stuck with Dave Gettleman forever when he needed to go, but this was fireable. What the Giants did. And now like I said, Saquon Barkley to me should be MVP, in consideration for MVP. So next up on the up list, the Buffalo Bills, man. They played a heck of a game. Even though that they were offensively, it looked like the Ravens were really starting to get the better of them. Buffalo is just one of those teams that knows how to get it done.
Yeah, again, this is the best Josh Allen has looked in the postseason. He didn't have to. He was able to, get in there and get the job done. People talked about, it was about the same thing on both sides. If, whichever quarterback didn't get it, they're a failure because they couldn't hit, couldn't get up there. But, the one who did is, possibly the MVP. And Josh Allen just has that grit, has that, has Buffalo behind him. He's carrying that whole city on his back. And man, this kind of this healthy of a Josh Allen right now is a scary Josh Allen.
And he's engaged to Haley Steinfeld. So, I mean, that needs to be, she reinvigorated this team. Shout out to Haley Steinfeld. She's the real MVP. Taylor Swift, move over. She's the one that's got it done for the Buffalo Bills. The Queen of Buffalo, as I think they want to call her. But yeah, I think rediscovering the run game for this Buffalo team, and not just having it go through Josh Allen, but discovering that James Cook is a very good running back has really changed how this Buffalo offense operates. Not having to feel like you need to force the ball to somebody like Stephon Diggs. Not a knock on Diggs, but it gets tricky when your offense runs through especially your passing offense needs to run through one guy. It's always easier when it runs through the run game, and having it, a lot like what the Ravens did, where it was, hey, the quarterback is really good with his legs and they got a really good running back. I get James Cook is no Derrick Henry, but the fact that I don't think it's celebrated enough how well James Cook has been this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They couldn't have been here if they didn't have that run game. If they had to keep relying on Josh Allen to make those runs, we've shown that in the past. He gets hit, he gets beat up. By the end of it, he is looking dead dog tired. And this Josh Allen looks pumped.
And a lot of him staying healthy, I feel like has to do with James Cook being out there and being productive. This week's top of the mountain. I mean, who else would it go to? Jaden Daniels, man, what a game! Getting to the conference championship as a rookie, I believe only Mark Sanchez has done that.
Mhm.
And you're on the doorstep of history. I thought at one point you could argue between him and CJ having the best rookie seasons. There's no argument anymore.
No, I mean, Jane Daniels is again, like I said earlier, just so comfortable in this. He could be one of just 3 people, possibly to ever win a Heisman and a Super Bowl. And to do it in your rookie year, like fascinating. And it's sometimes when we see these teams and we see this rookie, you're like, oh, okay, but then reality hits. Reality hasn't hit yet, and he doesn't look again. Even before the game, you had a guy like Dan Campbell who's like he's the scariest right now because he doesn't play like a rookie quarterback. He doesn't really make the mistakes. You also have to give a shout out to Cliff Kingsbury for really taking Jaden and finding that game plan that works perfect for him and what they want to do. And man, this combination, has really just accentuated everything good about Jaden Daniels, and he just looks incredible right now.
And here's the thing: this team to me doesn't feel complete.
No.
They could add weapons for Jaden Daniels. He's used Robinson and Eckler really well. And of course, him and Terry McLaurin are lethal.
Mhm.
And I think that if you can bolster this defense, and Dan Quinn knows how to do that. He knows how to get the best out of a defense. But if you can give him one more weapon, even if it's just another receiver, this Washington team could be one of the scariest teams out there. They could do something. I mean, this may be a bold prediction, I think I want to see what they do in this offseason to see if I'm a little bit more solid in this prediction for next season, or the next 2 seasons, if we're being honest. They make the right moves. This very much could be a team that is the first team in the NFC to repeat in over 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, they have the potential. Again, they're a young team, so it's not like, you got a bunch of guys who are falling off, after this season. They can really keep this team together, add the pieces, parts that they need to, draft well, pick up free agency. And man, if they make a run at this, even if they don't, they made it to the championship game, in Jay Daniels' first year. Okay, pick the right parts. Let's make another hard run at it.
And one other thing that I know JJ Watt noted it today. But this isn't just Jaden Daniels' first year. This is ownership's first year really making the decisions and having both hands on the steering wheel for this team. And they get it to the NFC Championship. Mm-hmm. What is in the future if the owners and GMs are making this good of decisions? What's in the future for this team? It's pretty admirable how far this franchise has come.
Yeah, what a turnaround, man.
Yeah. I mean, between them and between Houston, those are some of the best turnarounds I think should be studied.
Absolutely.
And now I think everyone is going to try and model their team after Washington and see what they can do with it. Well, we went 3 up. We're going to go 3 down. First up on the down list, Mark Andrews, man. Got to have you there. You can't drop. And that was it wasn't like this was a guy that was all over him. The ball hit him right in the hands, man.
It hits him in the hands, hits him in the chest. It's there. I get it that he's kind of fallen. He's turned. If it's a tad, it's right. It's maybe not exactly a little behind, but it's enough that it hit him, that he can catch it. All he has to do is hold on to that thing, and they're going into overtime, and that's a tough one. Again, that's a play that that'll haunt you for a long time. Hopefully, you can, get in there, get your mind, get in the off season, get your mind right, get back at it. But man, that's a hard one, and especially when that's the go-to play for the 2-point conversion for Baltimore. When you become that guy, man, it's hard to get over that. You're gonna have to try it again.
Yeah. And then on top of that, he had a fumble. He lost a fumble earlier in the game too. So 2 big plays that Mark Andrews kind of just cost the Ravens a shot to be in the AFC Championship again. This up on the down list, Texans OC Bobby Slowick, man. Same story it has been all season. My biggest fear for this season was the fact that you were going to overcomplicate things and then you were just going to be too stubborn to change. And that's kind of the way it was in this game. And I think one of the big things that really cost the Texans this game was Bobby Slowick putting Shaq Mason in over Juice Scruggs. Shaq Mason, like I said, he's an overpaid turnstile right now. And the fact that a lot of the sacks that were given up were because he didn't know where to go, or he was just out physicaled by that defensive line. There were reports that, okay, maybe Shaq would be on a short lease. Well, that's up to Bobby Slowick to say, get him out of the game. And D'Amico Ryans too. But your play calling has been crap all year, and it cost you a chance to go to the AFC Championship in a winnable game.
Yeah, it's not like Kansas City took a hard lead and it was never looking back. It definitely was very winnable in that, and it's hard to see that. Again, you have to adapt. You have to change. You have to figure out, hey, this isn't working. We got to figure out something that is, and have the ability to. That's how. Why do you think all these up and young, OCs are getting these jobs? Because they're trying something. They're getting out of the normal comfort zone. They're making and making these plays that are going to help their team win. But if you keep trying the same meat and potatoes and that's not working, man, you got to try something different.
And then on top of that, you've gotten your young, promising quarterback beaten up all year, sacked the second most times in the league. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that you just would not adapt. And I it was foreshadowed last year when he was kind of drug kicking and screaming to stop running Damian Pierce, to switch over to Devin Singletary. And even then, Devin Singletary was having some of the same problems that Joe Mixon had this year, where he was having to prepare to meet guys in his backfield as soon as he got the ball and cut and just make immediate decisions in that run game. Don't get me wrong, the Texans' run game over the last 2 games was very well executed, but a lot of times, in last, I would say year and a half, this offense has operated well in spite of some of the things that Bobby Slowick has done. And it's crazy to see how far he had fallen, because this time last year, it was him and Ben Johnson as the 2 guys that everyone was kind of clamoring for to be a new head coach. And now I think he's only gotten like maybe 1 interview, 2. I know that there was a rumored Jaguars one out there, but yeah, Texans OC Bobby Slowick is second on the down list. Well, Andy, are you ready for this week's Factory of Sadness? I promised it. I think you know where I'm going with this one.
I think I can guess.
Factory of Sadness this week, NFL officiating. What the hell was that in the Kansas City game? Wait, hang on. That's the same question that people have asked all year when it came to the Chiefs. It's not like this is just, I've seen it in our group chat a couple times. It's not like this is just, Texans tears. Chiefs defeating an opponent's tears. No, this goes back all year. It goes back to week 2 with that questionable pass interference call against Cincy where they would have beaten the Chiefs. And I'm sorry, but Will Anderson put his face in the chest of Patrick Mahomes. That should not have been roughing the passer. I get it's fast. Something like that should be reviewed. The damn slide. That made me so mad, because that was the same thing that everybody cried over when Azeez Al-Shire did it against Jacksonville. Don't get me wrong, he floored Trevor Lawrence, but that's the same position that Patrick Mahomes put both of those defenders in, who hit each other and got penalized. And then, of course, you're the flop out of bounds. If they would have thrown the flag on that, I might have ruined my TV. That would have been throw a chair at the TV worthy.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I think even when you have a guy like Troy Aikman, who's like, on air, on the broadcast, who's disgusted by it, who's like, come on, man, there has to be something. Replay happens so fast. Why can't this? Why can't we see? Oh, hey, actually, no one actually touched him like that. Take the flag back. Cool. Hey, we have to address this in the offseason about quarterback sliding. Either you slide way before or you're going to take the hit. I understand that we're protecting quarterbacks. We're an offensive league. Defensives essentially have to play with their arms, held behind their back the entire time. But we have to address that because it's not just Patrick. Don't get me wrong. Patrick Mahomes is great at waiting to the very last second to slide and get those hits. It's happened all season. It's happened not just this year, in past years. But yeah, I agree that this has to change. And again, why don't you call, why don't you call the flop on the outside? He should be penalized for trying because that was blatant, trying to draw.
You can't be, and you made the point about protecting the quarterbacks. Okay, well, what about CJ Stroud who's getting carried off the field? Mm-hmm. What about CJ Stroud who's coming up limping every time? What happened to not going after the quarterback's knees?
Well, I mean, look at the next game in Detroit, on that pick six that Goff threw. I mean, he unnecessarily eats one in the chin, just straight up gets hit hard. And, again, I don't know how much that factored in. He did go off, Bridgewater did come in for a minute, but I mean, he wasn't the same after that hit. He took a hard hit to the chin and rocked him for sure. And again, every other game, there were these real sketchy hits that didn't seem to be called as much.
Yeah, and Mahomes would have gotten them. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I really do kind of feel this way. Like, I'm so upset with Patrick Mahomes that I don't know if I can be a Texas Tech fan anymore. Like, I am that upset about the fact that he is just getting protected by these officials. Because if any one of those hits would have happened to Patrick Mahomes, that they might have been thrown out of the game. And, it's like Hunter Dillon just said, when you've got the commentators, not just the commentators, the analysts, and then your rules analysts coming in and saying, no, that was not the right call. And it's not just happening in this game. It has happened all year long. It has happened all season. And then, you have Mahomes come out today and talk about how he thinks the game got officiated fairly. Well, of course you think the game got officiated fairly. You got all the calls. At one point in that game, the Chiefs only had one penalty compared to the Texans 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. And that roughing call, it's just so happened that it was called after an offsides on the Chiefs, after a false start on the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They get that roughing call, and then it's first down on a down that would have stopped them and probably given the Texans offense the ball back with momentum. See, and here's the thing. Patrick says he's turning into Tom Brady's 2.0. I know Tom had some issues with the refs, but I was thinking about this today. Yeah, you could say some things about Tom with the refs, not to this degree. Because for the most part, Tom Brady was just dominant. The Patriots were just dominant. They just beat you. And if they weren't looking good doing it, they were finding smart ways to beat you. This is manipulation, man. And the fact that he flopped out of bounds, clear as day.
Yeah, I mean, it has shown the entire year that he knows the rules. He's not stupid. He knows the rules. He knows exactly what he's doing. Again, he hits the ground and is immediately looking, hands in the air, looking for a ref. Try to, and again, if he doesn't get it, you can tell that he's not upset. He just goes on to the next thing. He's just trying each time to get something to go his way, to get, whatever advantage and take advantage of the situation that he can. And it's, incredible that, everyone's letting it get away with it.
One of the most egregious things, though, was in that loss to the Bills, was the footage that was going around of him crying and complaining after the offsides call on that loss to the Bills. And, it's fine when Mahomes is the one getting the call. When Mahomes is the one getting the calls, but when they go against him and it does cost you the game like it has so many other teams that you have played, now you want to cry and complain and say it's F and BS. No. That's – and here's the thing. I used to really enjoy watching Patrick Mahomes play. It's just turned into this flopping, complaining – he's turned into every other superstar sports athlete that just gets the hate. And
again, it's kind of how it's been all season. They do just enough. He does it enough to get ahead and stay ahead and get the win. It's the he doesn't by any means hook or crook. He doesn't care that whether these calls happen or not. He just needs to whatever advantage that he can find to take to get ahead and win. He takes it.
My phone went off during that. I just got flagged for hurting his feelings. That'll do it for 3 up and 3 down. I gotta take 15 yards into the other room. But before we do that, we're gonna again, hey guys, like, share, and subscribe. Hit that button, get notified. Again, we want everyone to go see us on Twitch. Again, we're getting stuff together. We're looking at doing a live location either for our award show or for the Super Bowl show that is coming up. In this next segment, guys, I want y'all to throw out your take with us, whether or not you're buying or selling on these. It is buy or sell, so let us know in the chat whether or not you are buying or selling some of these takes we are going to throw at each other and throw at you. So we love hearing from you guys, but it is time for buy or sell. And this week, Andy, you and I kind of had the same ones, so I kind of mushed those two together and threw some other randos in there. Cool. You ready? Okay, so we'll get to the two that we had together. And basically, to summarize it, we both were kind of asking, have the Lions peaked? Yours was more of what are they going to do with the coaching staff kind of being dismantled with both coordinators going. Mine was straight up, are the Lions, is this the best we're going to ever see the Lions?
I mean, it's hard. I want to sell, and I want to sell real bad because I've bought into the Dan Campbell, like we're running through walls for this man. And don't get me wrong, I understand that, obviously the play calling has come from Ben Johnson. And again, without Aaron Glenn, this defense, who knows if they would be able to stay in these games. But I have, with what Dan has been able to assemble, the talent that he's been given, he went out there and got these guys and built this organization and built this team from being, a laughing stock to, a legit contender. I want to buy that sell that the Lions have peaked. I think they can get there. Again, it's going to be some offensive, some moves in the offseason to find a coordinator that really fits that Detroit style of football now. But I think Dan can do that, and I think he's going to keep having this team that is behind him so much that they're going to keep going for him. But it's going to be a tough road losing both your offensive and your defensive coordinator, especially one in the division.
I think you can relate to this. I'm in the same boat as you. I think you can relate to this. He's in the same position that Kyle Shanahan has been in so many times before. This is one of those true tests of how good of a team and how good of an organization you really are. Because not only is he losing both coordinators, he's probably going to be losing other pieces of that coaching staff, scouts, position coaches, executives even at times that are going to go join the coaching staffs of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. I know the Jets have their GM, but Ben Johnson's going again. They're bringing that same mentality in division. That to me is the one that's going to hurt. That's the one that if they start plucking from your coaching staff and for some reason it's just not hitting the same, but Ben Johnson is starting to show success, that's the one that's going to hurt. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying Dan Campbell doesn't have, he was pretty emotional in that press conference after the game. I'm not saying he doesn't have like the mental toughness to endure this, but I think it's a real test of what this organization can do. And at times, this organization has not been the most efficient or the most competent. I believe I don't think they have 2 winning seasons under their belt, but they were the first, or 2 winless seasons, under their belt, but they were the first one to get there. And I'm going to sell. I think Dan Campbell can navigate this really well, and they have a good GM too. I think they can navigate this pretty well together. It's tenuous though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is, if there's a time for teams like the Lions to peak, it's when something like to peak and start declining, even just a little bit. It's when times like this happen. Next up on buy or sell, is Lamar Jackson a failure until he wins a ring?
For me, I think I'm gonna sell. Like you have, especially how he's getting, he's so good. He's gotten better and better, and he's really figuring out, who he is and what the dynamic that he can bring. Again, you have lots of, you have guys who never win one. You have a guy like Peyton Manning who didn't win one, till late. I think he was in his 30s. I think I saw that. It wasn't till later, and Lamar just hit 28. So, I don't think we're there. I don't think he's a failure until, I definitely sell this. But again, I understand that, right now, if you don't have, if you don't have hardware, then, what did you do with your career? Is kind of how it looks like. And I just don't think that's fair to a guy like Lamar Jackson. I think that really kind of diminishes all the things that he has done, and he has done really well. And, sometimes it just, is it on him for what plays are called? He's doing what he's told, and he does it really well. And I just don't know if it's always has to be on Lamar to or even a quarterback like that to show to be successful or to fail. You have a whole lot of people behind you too that play into that factor.
If this was 2 years ago and Greg Roman was still calling the offense, regardless of if Lamar had won another MVP or not, I probably would have bought it. I think I'm going to sell this because you asked the question, you ask a question like this, and all you got to do is swap out one word, kind of change the way people think about it. And is Dan Marino a failure? Do you consider him a failure, even though he never won a ring? Now, he did do one thing that Lamar has not done, and he got to a Super Bowl, which with the MVPs that he's won, with all the accomplishments that Dan Marino has, even just getting to a Super Bowl and losing, that he at least still got there, But I don't think he's a failure. I would sell that because he improved on all the things I wanted to see him improve on. He's much more dynamic with his arm than he was in years past, and he can still use his legs. And I have said, just kind of in private in our group chats, that if Lamar Jackson could even just get 60%, match 60% of his leg talent with his arm talent, if it can just be 60% of what that is, he's the most dangerous player in the league. There's no doubt about it. And I think he's past that 60% mark. Like, if there's only one guy that I feel like could go over Saquon Barkley as the MVP, it's Lamar Jackson. And the only reason, and I'll say this, the only reason it's those two is because Joe Burrow didn't make the playoffs. Like, that's it. Like, I mean, but Lamar, even if Joe Burrow did, it would be a crazy close race between those two. And I might have to give it to Lamar Jackson because he became the first player to throw for over 4,000 yards and rush for over 900 yards. No other player had done that. And that might almost hand him the MVP, but I don't think he's a failure until he wins the ring. Now, if he never gets there, I think it's a more tragic story than Dan Marino.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now, here's the surprise ones. Those are the two that we put together. Here's the surprise ones. Next up on buy or sell Pete Carroll to the Raiders.
Man.
I know he's been interested, and I know that there's been interest there. I think an interview has been done. I know he's interviewed at like I believe it was with the Raiders. But is Pete Carroll to the Raiders something that is much needed for that team?
I mean, again, Pete has the experience. He has the tenure in the NFL. Again, he was with Seattle for, forever, feels like at this point. But I mean, maybe it is. Maybe they bring in a guy who has this tenured history, who's did get to the Super Bowl a few times, has a ring, got there and can make something. They get some good draft picks. He can build this team. I mean, I don't hate it. So I mean, I'd buy. I don't know if that's my first choice. He is on the older side, obviously, which isn't a bad thing, but would make him definitely again the oldest coach in the league by a long shot. But yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll's had success. Vegas is a pretty nice town for him, so why not?
By the way, my phone just went off. I got fined $25,000 for some random guy's social media post. Much like Joe Mixon got fined $25,000 for something TJ Hushmanzada said. So, thanks NFL officiating. But anyway, Pete Carroll to the Raiders. I don't hate the move. I buy it. I think he brings stability in the head coaching position. Maybe not necessarily the same brand of stability that like John Gruden brought, but definitely his own brand of stability. And he's a guy that has been shown to get the most out of players. Maybe he's a guy that Dion, if they aren't, it doesn't look like Dion's coming to the NFL. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's a guy that if they do go out and get a Travis Hunter, a Shadur Sanders, or something like that, he definitely can bring the most out of them. He definitely did it with Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson, the Legion of Boom, all those guys. He knows how to manage the personalities. I think he connects players really well. And it wasn't that he got fired in Seattle. It was one of those, hey, the story's ended. Yeah. And they wanted to go in a different direction. Can he handle the craziness of Mark Davis, though? He might be the most patient guy in the world, and Pete Carroll might be the most giving guy in the world to handle that kind of craziness.
Yeah. He might just that laid back attitude of his just might be great. And again, you don't see many players going, oh, I hated playing under Pete Carroll. He's definitely a favorite among his players, and yeah, I think again maybe that's the shock that what they need someone to get behind and to get those guys to get that team up and rolling in the right direction.
Okay, next up on buy or sell. Tell me if you've heard this one before, okay? Josh McDaniels is the new offensive coordinator in New England.
I mean, I feel like this was so unexpected. Why? Yeah.
I mean, that's where he's had the most success.
Mm-hmm.
And Vrabel's the type of coach that knows what he's going to bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, when that broke of, they're expected to hire him, and okay, sure, just bring them all back, and this is what we're building. And the Patriot way lives on, I guess.
Yeah, you go back to last year to hear how I feel about the Patriot way. Look, I'll buy him as an offensive coordinator because he was the OC on some of the more efficient Patriot Brady-driven offenses. Mm-hmm. They've got a young, and we'll get to this here in a second. But they've got a young quarterback. Vrabel knows defense, and they're going to have a ton of cap space. I think they're projected to have maximum $130 million in cap space to spend. So he's going to get some toys to play with. As an OC, I'll buy him, but for the love of God, any NFL owner out there, this coaching cycle from here on out, please do not make this man a head coach again.
Well, I mean, is he, are the Raiders still paying him?
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, he can live like, he can pull the Cliff Kingsbury and be an OC, have all the fun, the no responsibility, and still get paid like a head coach. So seems like a win-win to me.
I mean, yeah, I guess, again, fired NFL head coach is the best. Fired head coach in college or the NFL is the best job in the world. So, I think as an OC, I'd buy it. Don't ever make him a head coach again.
Mm-hmm.
That'll do it for buy or sell, guys. Again, I want to run a quick shout out to our sponsor.
The Extra Point with Ryan Justice is sponsored by The Phone Medic. For the best in cell phone, tablet, or laptop repairs, the Phone Medic is the only choice for you. The Phone Medic also offers gaming PCs and laptops for both gamers and everyday users. Visit one of the 3 Phone Medic locations in Amarillo, Canyon, and their new location in Lubbock today.
And of course, guys, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit those buttons, and let people know, man. Let people know about the extra points. So we're gonna mix it up a little bit because there aren't as many games to cover, and they're quickly dwindling, which is making me sad. And making significant others all around the USA very happy. We're going to introduce a new segment, and we're going to call this Rise and Fall. So we're going to take a look. We're going to do this over the next, we're going to do this today, next week, and then the week after. We're going to take a look at some of the teams that we kind of had our eye on, and we're going to see which ones that we think are going to be rising going into the next season, and which ones that we think are going to be falling going into next season, and why. So for us, here's our risers for this week. I went with the Broncos. Andy, you went with the Patriots. What's got you thinking the Patriots are going to be the ones rising going into the next season?
I mean, I think we just kind of covered it. Obviously, with Josh McDaniels coming back as the OC, it brings something that, when he's been a part of that, they were a winning team. Having Vrabel come in, bringing a new feeling into it, having your quarterback in May, having all that cap space. I think, of the teams that were, in the lower half, in the lower part of the league, for them to get this coaching staff and have the most potential, I think the Patriots, at least right now as they start their offseason, seem to be, just in a coaching standpoint, have the most potential and could be on the rise the fastest for sure.
Yeah, they're projected to have the most cap space in the league once the offseason starts. You've got the quarterback, you've got a proven head coach, a head coach that has been to an AFC Championship game, has had the number 1 seed in the AFC. He knows this team inside and out. He knows how to put a good defense together. Drake May had some moments last year where you could sit there and go, man, I see it. I see where the starting point is and where you can build around this guy. And so, yeah, I definitely get why you're thinking. I was actually very much until you gave me that answer, I was very much considering them for myself. For me, it's the Broncos. The way that they navigated this cap hit that Russell Wilson left them with, and the way that they drafted, the fact that Bo Nix came in, and a lot of people were thinking, he's just going to be Sean Payton's, yes guy, and there weren't really a whole lot of expectations. You saw what happened with Sean Payton and the Broncos last year. You're thinking, they get rid of Jerry Jeudy. You're thinking, man, there's not a whole lot of hope for the Broncos, and for them to come in and get the momentum that they did, for Bo Nix to look like he did throughout this season, and they get in the playoffs on the 7th seed. I know that they kind of got put in their place by Buffalo, but for them to get there after the last 2 years, I know that they're going to have some tricky, they're going to have to maneuver a little bit in order to really make some upgrades on this team. I think they're going to have to build through the draft a lot, but the fact that they got to where they are, and I would consider them to be right there in the mix next year, that's got them as one of my teams that are rising going into next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think as this team developed, as Bo Nix really got an understanding of, what it's like to be in the NFL. I mean, him and Sean Payton finally started to hit at the back half of this season. And I think, it can only go up from here. I think, again, expectations were real low for them. They way exceed those expectations. And I think they can only go up. And I think, like you said, I think they just got to make the right moves. And I mean, Bo Nix showed why he was in that, why he's in that conversation of Rookie of the Year for so long. I think, man, it's going to be great to see how they do next year once they, get those pieces around and, maximize what they have.
I think they've only got like one more year of a hard cap hit from Russell Wilson.
I think so.
Like a plus $50 million plus cap hit from Russell Wilson. before they can really start making some moves. So got to be smart this year. So we, of course, told you we got our teams that we think are rising going into next season. Here are the ones that we think are falling. I'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's one of those things where, like we asked a couple weeks ago, is Mike Tomlin the team keeping this team in purgatory? And they win, sure. They have the winning seasons. They give this city a lot of hope. They made the playoffs as the 6th seed. But man, once they get there, it's very clear that they just do not have the horses to run the race. And I mean, they finished 10-7. They started off 3-0, but they just did not look good going down the stretch. They lose 5 in a row to end the season, and I don't know. They got a lot of questions at quarterback. The culture does not seem to produce guys who are interested in giving it all. I mean, how many receivers and running backs have they had attitude problems with over the years? The latest being George Pickens. So I picked them to have I actually picked them this year to have a losing season. It would not surprise me if next year is Mike Tomlin. I know he said it forever, but it would not surprise me if next year is Mike Tomlin's first losing season.
You know, I mean, again, it's the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And, you know, I think at this point, you almost have to hope they fall, you know, for something to change in Pittsburgh, because it's just, they're at the status quo every year. They get to a certain point. They do just enough. You know, I don't know if I think it would be a good thing for them to really kind of hit it, start a little fresh and kind of build up. But yeah, I mean, you can only stay stagnant for so long, and it doesn't look like it's going up any. You only have one, you know, you've definitely hit the ceiling. You only have, you know, down to go. So I definitely see that happening.
I think the highest they've picked under Mike Tomlin, don't take me to the bank on this, but I think it was 20th when they got Kenny Pickett in what was it, 21? So yeah, I don't, they aren't up there getting like the premium talent. Don't get me wrong, they've been able to find it, but they aren't up there getting the premium talent that you would think in those higher picks. You had the Dolphins as falling going into next season. What's got you low on the Miami guys?
I mean, I feel like we kind of saw that, you know, we kind of saw it through the season, you know, with Tua getting hurt, you know, Mike McDaniel kind of just, you know, what we was, you know, this special about him, just kind of really hasn't done much with it. You have Tyreek Hill, who may or may not, you know, stay with the team. You know, it's just kind of it seems like, you know, water, you know, in Miami, water's kind of taken on, you know, in the ship, and it doesn't look like, you know, you're going to be paddling out of it. It seems definitely that they're kind of lost as a team and where they want to go. They spend all that money trying to get guys in there, and it just hasn't worked for them. It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. They're probably going to lose. They're probably going to lose their defensive coordinator. You know, it's hard to see where this team is going to go, you know, with this. I just don't see it really projecting up. You know, they barely missed out, you know, this season. I don't know if, you know, it's going to get much better for them for next season.
I think it's more of the same that you got last year. You know, at some point you got to question whether or not this is Mike McDaniel. Like, at some point, whether Mike McDaniel just cannot get it with all the talent that he has, with some of the great schemes that he has done, and as well as he can put together an offense. You got to think his ceiling as a head coach is being able to get it done against the real contenders in the AFC.
Yep.
I believe he's only got like 3 wins against winning teams. You saw their last gasp was against Houston, and they just completely dismantled Tua Tagovailoa. You can't keep him healthy. The defense has had problems all year. You started the year with turmoil with the Tyreek Hill incident, and it just does not seem like this team is under control at points. McDaniel alluded to it in a press conference where, You had guys who were making business decisions instead of making decisions that were right for the team. So now you've got the head coach pointing fingers. And that to me just doesn't spell a team with any momentum going into next year. We'll see what they do in the offseason. But yeah, I definitely could see the Dolphins falling off in 2025. Well, that'll do it for the this week's rising and falling. We'll follow up with four more teams next week: 2 risers, 2 fallers. Now, here we are, Andy. It's time to look ahead. It's the Final Four. It's championship weekend. One of the surprise. I think there's a certain Super Bowl that everyone wants. We'll get into the NFC Championship. They kick us off on Sunday. Washington at Philly. Philly 6.5-point favorites. The over/under is at 47.5.
Yeah, I mean that's good odds. You should take it because I think Jaden Daniels can score 48 on his own at this point. I mean, again, if they keep the momentum like they've had the last 2 weeks, this Commander team is going to be hard to deal with. It's dynamic. The Eagles are going to have a hard time trying to contain that. It's going to be, can you force James to not take off and run these schemes on him? And does for Philly, does Hurts start to come out of his kind of 2-game slump and show what he's going to do and not just leave it just on Saquon? So we'll see. But man, it's I think I know in the season they split the games. I think Philly won the first meeting, Washington won the second. So this is the rubber match.
This is going to be a battle, I think, of 2 really good defensive coordinators. I know the attention is going to be on Saquon, and if Jalen Hurts can kind of get some things together. But Vic Fangio is one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL and has been for a long time. Maybe not so much as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he is top of the mountain. And then of course Dan Quinn, who has coached in the Super Bowl and has put together some really good defenses in the for the Cowboys. And what's interesting is he's going up against his offensive coordinator that he had when he was at the Cowboys. This is going to be a chess match, I think. And I think the question here is going to be, can Vic Fangio and that Eagles defense finally make Jaden Daniels look like a rookie, or look like, maybe not necessarily look like the Jaden Daniels we saw in week 1, but definitely make him make some rookie mistakes. Definitely make him make some mistakes, throw some things that he hasn't seen, throw some concepts at him. I mean, if there's any time to pull him out, it's now. And this Eagles roster is time to really start living up to that name. They're close. They're really close. But I think Vic Fangio, if there's anyone that could definitely get to Jaden Daniels, it's Vic Fangio's defense. So
yeah, I think it's going to be up to him to. Cause I mean, defenses are what's going to win this game.
So here it is. Here's who we got going to the Super Bowl. You're riding the momentum with the Commanders. For me, it's Vic Fangio plus Saquon Barkley.
Hey, I mean, that's not a bad pick. I'm definitely living this Commanders hype for sure. I mean, they just have all this momentum. It's great to see. Especially again when you go out to Detroit, you beat them like you did. You have a wild game against Tampa. I mean, they're just on fire, and I think they're going to take it to Philly, and it's going to be a tough game for them for sure. Yep.
Well, now the one that I think America is really united on. I think this is one that has united us as a country. Buffalo, Kansas City, AFC Championship. Kansas City's only a 2-point favorite. I know it was in Buffalo last time, but they're the only ones to legitimately beat the Chiefs this year. And the over-under's at 47.5, just like the NFC Championship.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time for Buffalo to get over the hump. They've lost 3 times to
0-3.
0-3 again, in the playoffs, so they have to. This is the game. This is a do or die not just in, obviously for the season, but like for Josh Allen, like you have to come in here. You're the healthiest you've looked. This is the best you've looked. This team is firing. You have to go into Arrowhead. You have to take on a team that hasn't looked dynamic, a team that hasn't been world eaters. They haven't been, winning in blowouts. They're a team that has survived this season. You have to take out, make Kelsey not a factor, and then you're eliminating half of the options for Patrick Mahomes. I think this is a Bills team that's going to come in there looking for blood, and I think Kansas City is going to have a hard time with this Bills Mafia for sure.
Yeah, I agree. We need to get the Josh Allen that showed up in that game back in Buffalo. We need to get the Josh Allen that is just running over dudes going into the end zone. And I think we need to see this Bills team make this Kansas City team hurt a little bit. They've only won by more than one score, I think once or twice this year. And again, Mahomes didn't break 200 yards last week. And Josh Allen has been throwing it all over the place. I know it's going to be cold. And I got a feeling that Buffalo played in the cold last week, just like Kansas City did. I've got a feeling that Buffalo could be more physical than Kansas City. And if Buffalo can get in there and beat up Kansas City, sorry, I just got flagged again for saying that. So I'm 3 penalties for 65 yards. And I'm not apologizing to Mahomes. But, I think if they can get in there and beat up Patrick Mahomes. If you're going to get the flag, make it count, I wouldn't say get yourself thrown out of the game, but if you're going to get the flag, make it count, because I don't think this offense can really do much against this defense, So Get in there and beat them up. Get in there and get physical with this team, because you saw that's kind of what won them the game last time was Josh Allen just running over guys. I think, you and I are in agreement. The Bills are going to the Super Bowl if they can do just that. We want them to go to the Super Bowl. So they deserve it too. Because if Josh Allen can't win this, that I think that ends the story. He can't get it done. Not against Mahomes.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And and again, as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing, most of the time everything goes through Arrowhead. So you have to go to Arrowhead. You have to beat Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce in their house, and earn that spot to go to the Super Bowl and and show why you deserve to be there.
Yep. Well, 3 flags later, and lots of fun with the commenters. We made it to the extra picks, guys. This is done via Prize Picks. There's some great promotions going on right now via Prize Picks. You can get $50 for referring a friend if you are already signed up. They had some free picks going on last weekend, taking part in it. Here are my Prize Picks for this weekend to get into the extra picks. Jaden Daniels, I'm going to say this, under 222.5 passing yards. He's up against a really good Philly defense with possibly the defensive rookie of the year on the other side.
Yeah, I can see that. We may see more of Daniels on his, using his legs than trying to throw it out there. So I think we're going to see some interesting, probably more of a ground game from him than putting it up in the air. So that's not a bad.
Not to mention Eckler and Brian Robinson are going to be there too. I think Philly is going to be. It's really kind of Terry McLaurin and nobody else. So I think they're going to do everything they can to take him away from Jaden Daniels, and he's going to have to rely on Eckler and Robinson and his own legs. The next one up is Saquon Barkley over 129.5 rushing yards. I think that's too low.
Yeah, I think, especially for the game that he had this last week, that was one thing they were able to, the Lions were able to, they got a lot of rushing yards on him. But yeah, so I think it's going to be the run is harder for them to stop. So I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't think they have the defensive line. And of course, Philly's got one of the best offensive lines in the league. I don't think they have the defensive line to stop Saquon Barkley, especially with how physical he runs, and Gainwell. When Gainwell comes into the game, he's done really well as well. So yeah, I would hit the over on Saquon Barkley. And then of course I had to include him. I had to pick him just because it was easy. But I mean, it's a smart pick, I guess. Travis Kelce over 70.5 rushing yards and maybe one blown kiss to Taylor Swift.
I mean, probably, I think that's probably, or, we could see, hopefully we see Travis Kelce with a bunch of tears. That's my goal is Travis Kelce let him have 71 yards, but is still crying at the end of the day.
Will those teardrops be on her guitar?
I hope so. Maybe they'll write a song about it and make him $1 billion.
I don't want to hear him sing. That's the thing. I like this podcast too. I don't want to hear him sing. And then, yeah. Sorry, I got flagged for disparaging Taylor Swift.
Are you taking the over under on how many flags get thrown?
Ooh, that wasn't on Prize Pick. Like what the difference is going to be between flags against the Chiefs and flags against the Bills and ooh, man, I'm gonna say plus 3.5 in the Chiefs' favor.
That's
the Bills will get more. The Bills will get 3.5 more, over 3.5 more flags against them than the Chiefs. I mean, I'm up to 4, so I mean, it's
alone,
and it's 127 yards of penalties that I've got to go. I guess run laps. I don't know how I'm taking these yardage. I've been fined like $60,000 already. So, sorry, I'm broke as hell. But I mean, not really. But I don't know, have $60,000 to give to the league. But yeah, I mean, there you go. Travis Kelce over 70.5 yards. That'll do it for the Extra Point, guys. Championship weekend. Of course, next week is the Pro Bowl. But next week is our award show. So we will be handing out our MVP, which is our top of the mountain. We're going to be handing out our offensive, defensive rookies of the year. Andy, I forgot my picks in. I'm going to need yours here soon.
Absolutely.
But yeah, offensive and defensive rookie of the years. Biggest surprise, biggest disappointment. Who is our factory of sadness for the 2025 season? All that and more. We might be coming to you live from somewhere. We're in there working on it. If you guys are in the Amarillo area, come check us out. When we do our live show, we're going to have some raffles going on from our sponsors. And I'm going to be working up a little something cool to see if we can't get a raffle going for. So keep an eye on the social media for that, guys. Again, go like, share, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsors, the Phone Medic of Amarillo, Canyon, and Lubbock. Andy, you ready for the Final Four?
Oh man, here we go. It's going to be talk about an exciting game, and then one that has to go down.
You got any Super Bowl traditions that you do?
No, I mean not a whole lot. Nachos are always number one. Food wise, we always do nachos.
Dude, for me, it's like the tried and true summer sausage, cheese, and crackers.
Perfect.
There you go. I will stay at a bad Super Bowl party if they have badass cheese and crackers and summer sausage. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, thank y'all for joining us this week. For Andy, I'm Ryan. It is goodbye and good night.